So let's think about what raising to a negative fraction would mean. For example, if you have 8 to the negative 1/3, what would that mean? Well, we want this to have a consistent meaning, a meaning that's consistent with the properties of exponents. And so if you use that property of exponents, that when you raise a number to a power and raise that power to another power, you multiply the exponents. If you apply that to 8 to the negative 1/3, negative 1/3 is equal to 1/3 times negative 1. So we would want to define 8 to the negative 1/3 to be 8 to the 1/3 raised to the negative first power. Well, if we defined 8 to the negative 1/3 that way, what would that tell us? 8 to the 1/3 is a half. No, 8 to the 1/3 is 2. 2 to the negative first power is a half. So 8 to the negative 1/3 should be 1/2. And in general, when you take something to the negative 1 power, it means 1 divided by. So 8 to the negative 1/3 should be 8. It should be 1 divided by 8 to the 1/3, which in this case is a half. And in general, we define, if a is positive, a to the negative 1 over n to be 1 divided by a to the 1 over n. That's completely consistent with how we handle negative exponents. We just take the reciprocal. So here's one example. What's 16 to the negative 1/2 power? By definition, this is equal to 1 divided by 16 to the 1/2 power. 16 to the 1/2 power is the square root of 16. Square root of 16 is 4, so you get 1/4. And similarly, if you have a negative fraction, but the numerator isn't 1, so similarly, we define a to the minus m over n to just be 1 divided by a to the m over n. So this is the general definition of raising a number to a negative fraction. For example, what's 8 to the negative 2/3? Well, that's going to be 1 divided by 8 to the positive 2/3. And how do we do 8 to the positive 2/3? We take the cube root of 8, that's 2, and then square it. Right? It's the cube root of 8 squared, and this is 1 over 2 squared, so it's 1/4. So now we know how to raise any positive number to any fraction power. So we started with defining a number raised to a positive integer power. So the power is like 2 or 3 or 4 or 1. And then we went to 0 and we defined a number raised to the 0 power to be 1. And then we continued to negative integers. So the powers are negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and so on. And then after we did that, we moved on to making the exponents fractions. And we started by defining a number a raised to the 1 over n power, where n is a positive integer, and then in general a to any positive fraction power. And now we finish that off by doing the negative fractions. It's just going to be 1 divided by a to the power, which is the positive fraction, like this. So now we know how to do any positive number a raised to any power that's a fraction.